place of peace, a place of refuge, a place of unity, and a place of hope. I thank you.
I thank Her Excellency Ellen Johnson-Sirleaf for your strong and wise words. I now give the floor to Her Excellency Gro Harlem Brundtland, former Prime Minister of Norway, former Director General of the World Health Organization, a medical doctor committed to health as a human right, and instrumental in placing sustainable development at the forefront of our international agenda.
Madam President, Secretary General, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it is a great honor for me to address you marking the 80th anniversary of the United Nations. I was born at the cusp of the World War II. My parents were both active in the resistance against the Nazi occupation of Norway, and we had to flee the country. Some of my earliest memories are from Sweden, where my parents worked for Norwegian refugees. And I grew up in a Europe where the ravages of war were still clearly visible, where millions carried terrible scars on their bodies and their souls. It is against this background that the UN was founded, not as a symbol, but as a solemn promise. A promise to equip humanity with legal and diplomatic tools to prevent wars of conquest and domination. A promise to enshrine universal human rights as a bulwark against totalitarianism, racism, and oppression. A promise to foster peace, development, and dignity for all people. So, Madam President, let me highlight two areas where the UN has made an undeniable difference that also are part of particular importance to me personally. First, sustainability. When Secretary General Javier Pérez de Cuéllar asked me to chair the World Commission on Environment and Development, I accepted with great humility. And I am very proud of the report we produced, Our Common Future. It helped cement the concept of sustainable development in our collective consciousness. Thanks to UN-led efforts, we started charting a path towards economic development that does not destroy the basis of life for future generations, our climate and our natural environment. But we are today exceeding the planet's boundaries and approaching tipping points where there is no way back. Over 80% of the targets under the Sustainable Development Goals are today off track. Second, President, gender equality. During the UN's International Year Women's Year in 1975, I had just entered government for the first time. Many of my male colleagues hardly knew how to deal with me. In 1979 came the UN Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination against Women. In 1981, I became Prime Minister for the first time. In 1995, 30 years ago this month, I delivered my address at the 4th World Conference on Women in Beijing. I spoke of the moral and economic imperative to end gender apartheid. I believed too optimistically that we would have come further by now. I did not foresee the intensity of the pushback that would come. Even today, there are countries where not a single woman sits in the highest decision-making bodies, including among the P5. But despite such adversity, the UN has methodically worked to strengthen the position of women through education, through microfinance, through work for sexual and reproductive rights and health, and through intense and effective advocacy work. With resolve and determination, we will get there in the end. So, Madam President, I have lived longer than most of you. I have witnessed the tangible differences the UN makes through economic upturns and downturns, political ebbs and flows. I have no patience for those who dismiss the UN as outdated. We are going through a time of great geopolitical shifts and impressive, but also frightening, technological development. The UN as our common hub for getting the facts on the table, debating and deciding on solutions, and acting is more important than ever. We owe that not just to ourselves, but to the generations to come. Thank you.
I thank Her Excellency Gro Harlem Brundtland for her blunt and powerful words. I have the honor now to give the floor to Ms. Maria Ressa, 2021 Nobel Peace Prize laureate, award-winning journalist, professor at Columbia University, co-founder of Rappler online news site, and a fearless defender of freedom of expression in the face of constant political harassment and arrests.
President Baerbock, Secretary General Guterres, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. I'm normally chasing you here, and here I am. It's actually a very interesting place. Look, 80 years ago, this institution was born to prevent humanity from destroying itself. Never again, after fascism manipulated information, eroded truth, and dehumanized entire populations to enable genocide and global war. Today, we stand on the rubble of the world that was, and the challenge is to rebuild the United Nations for now, for this moment, when similar forces that led to those atrocities 80 years ago are now surging through digital platforms, insidiously manipulating us for power and profit. The biggest battle we face today is impunity, and it leads to our dehumanization in both the physical world, where wars rage from Ukraine to Gaza, and in the virtual world, where our minds and emotions are manipulated by surveillance capitalism for profit. To fight that, we need information integrity to remind us to be human. I became a journalist because information is power. But news groups lost our gatekeeping powers when an atom bomb exploded in our information ecosystem, a technological one that's silently destroying the very foundations the UN was built to protect. This is the deadliest period for journalists in recorded history. More than 240 journalists killed in Gaza alone. More than died in World War I, World War II, Vietnam, and the former Yugoslavia combined. This is unprecedented. They're targeted, and there must be accountability. We're living through an information Armageddon, where lies spread 6 times faster than facts on social media. That's a 2018 MIT study. It is so much worse today with generative AI. And the 3 sentences I've said over and over since 2016, without facts, you can't have truth. Without truth, you can't have trust. Without these 3, we don't have a shared reality. We can't begin to solve any problems, let alone the existential ones you heard from the speakers before me. We cannot have journalism. We cannot have electoral integrity. We cannot have democracy. This is manipulation of human behavior at the cellular levels of our countries. Algorithms reward outrage over empathy, spreading fear, anger, and